I suppose we all have a Baptist deacon story somewhere in our backgrounds at our ages. I've got to tell you one. My father was in Chicago serving as a minister. It was part of a ministerial council of churches. And one day they were at lunch, and one Methodist preacher got up and said, I got to tell you about a Baptist deacon I heard about in a little town. And he had an argument with his pastor. I know that would never happen, but had an argument with his pastor, and it reached the point where they couldn't resolve their conflicts. Well, it's a little town. There's only a Baptist church and a Methodist church, so he goes to the Methodist church. Before they can bridge their gap, he passes away. And the widow comes to the Methodist preacher and says, I don't want to put you on the spot, I don't want to be political in this little town, but I know he wouldn't want to have his funeral in the Baptist church. So, well, it may have some ramifications. Let me talk to the bishop. So he talked to the bishop, and the bishop said, of course, bury every Baptist deacon you can. Well, my dad's other Baptist member of the council stood up and said, you're right, friends. It says right here in Matthew, our Savior himself said, let the dead bury the dead. I don't think that describes our situation here at St. Matthew's. We have a rich tradition of deacon ministry. It's changed over the years. About 15 years ago, maybe a little longer than that, we had been having a family-based ministry. In fact, in the bylaws, it talks about having 60 deacons. We don't have anywhere near that number of active deacons as far as on the active council. That was because they were dividing all the families up, and everybody had about 15 or 20 members, so that's why we've had that. We currently have 41 serving, with some who've moved away or away temporarily. But let me give a little background here. Talked about the bylaws, and the bylaws talk about who the deacons are in the deacon council. 60 deacons elected by the church shall constitute the deacon council. Each member of the deacon council shall serve a 3-year term beginning July 1st in the calendar year of each member's election and ending the 3rd anniversary of that July. Each year the term of 1/3 of the number of deacons shall expire, so that the members of the deacon council will serve on a rotational basis. So everybody serves 3 years. And we've got, as I said, 41 working right now. But about almost 2 years ago now, when I call the perfect storm happened, the master plan committee came along and talked about some transition statements. And then Greg had the insight to ask Greg Brockman if he would be chair of deacons.
Ken Brockman.
I said Greg, Ken Brockman, yeah. And if you know Ken Brockman, he is a bulldog. And he started taking that seriously, got it organized, said we need to do these, we need to do these things. And we were approaching Deacon 2.0. He's moving us toward Deacon 3.0, you know. I would say it with an exclamation point, but my granddaughter Frances came up with a term. She calls it that's not an exclamation, that's a plusclamation point. So I'll put that beside it. It's a plusclamation point. One of the things that he did was develop this manual. Because we felt that deacons coming on didn't always know what they were doing, why they were doing it, how they should do it, where they should serve, did they have a reason to come, were they coming for no reason at all, and was anything happening? Ken went to work on that. We've got a manual here. It's the deacon. This is this year's edition. We've got our purposes in here, a letter from the deacon chair. We've got pictures. We've got a list of all who are serving. We've got pictures of everybody, their contact information. Then we go on and breaks it down to how we define our organization. We've got the bylaws thing in here, the deacon council, what we're trying to do. We've got the teams broken down in here. So we've become quite organized, and people seem to be responding to that very well. They're willing to serve. We've never had a problem asking people to do something, but they want to know what they're doing and if they're achieving something. And we feel like that's happening right now. All deacons are invited. We have a list of about 120, 125 ordained deacons in our church body. Some are not here anymore, some have passed away. We've got about 120 really that we can call on. We have an active deacon council that's elected by the church for a 3-year term. And we call these others, we've wrestled with the term, we call them reserve deacons. As Gary Jenkins is always reminded, there's no such thing as an inactive deacon. Once a deacon, you're always a deacon. So we've kindly let them, serve and be off a year if they want to. But here's the neat thing. We started putting emphasis, Ken put together a thing called a think tank team. And there were several of us on there. We began to brainstorm ideas of how we could get things active and get things going. And one of the things we came up with was last February, we had a joint meeting. We invited all active deacons to come, and we had a great day. We had close to 100 people here that day, which I thought was remarkable. And we had a nice entertaining program and laid out some things. We introduced them to the teams and what they were doing. Greg did a great job giving us a charge, and people were kind of pumped up about that. And since that, we invite all deacons, all reserve deacons, whenever we send out a notice of a meeting, everybody's included. We send them the meeting, the agenda, we send them the minutes, and we've had good response to that. We've had as many as 8 and 10 there, or as few as 2. But I think that's good, that people who want to come, and they're coming. One of the things we want to do is make the meetings, if you're coming to a meeting, make it worthwhile. And we feel like we're doing that. We're inviting speakers to come. We had Jim Cordell came as a reserve deacon that did a devotional and then gave us a little inspiration about what we're doing with our charge. We had Gary and Judy Jenkins come, and they gave a great seminar on how to connect with people, and how to invite. If you've been around Gary and Judy, I bet people in this room have been touched in some way by Gary and Judy and are a member of this church because of that. Let's see, we had Brent Walker spoke to we had a second large meeting in July when he was here. Had good response to that, even though there were a lot of people out of town during that time. We also had Jackie Ward. Jackie is one of the top pastoral care people in the state. And he came and gave us tips on how to talk with people and using our spiritual gifts. Said something very interesting. He said, we were doing a spiritual gifts evaluation, and he said, you should do that, you should know, but he gave us a long list of people who probably wouldn't make a personnel list based on their gifts, but God used them anyway, so he encouraged us with that. Vic Chesser is our chair-elect. We have a chair and then the chair-elect, so they come on behind. We're working with the bylaws to kind of lessen that number of 60, trying to work on a workable number. We have 6 teams, right? Actually, I started to say 6.5. We counted 7 with 6 on them. 7 is because one of the things that came out of our deacon nomination last time was Sandy Berry. Anybody know Sandy Berry? Mm-hmm. Sandy came not wanting to serve as a deacon. She'd been approached many times, but she came and saw what we're doing and was touched. And she said, I want to have, if I can serve in some way to help feed the deacons. Deacons are out to nurture everybody else. Who's feeding the deacons? And she wanted to work on a spiritual. We developed a team this year called the Spirit Team. And she organized a thing called a boot camp. We had our first boot camp after our deacons came on board. We had a lot of new deacons this last time. And so we had a very nice session on a Saturday morning over in the sanctuary and laid out what they were doing and why they should be doing it. It's interesting. We'll continue that again this year. It's interesting, almost every one of those people have been very active. One of the challenges we had was people not showing up at meetings, and almost every one of those people have come. They're very active on their teams. You probably know our teams. Let me tell you about them because they've become very organized, doing some great things. We have a deacon prayer team. Team leaders are Aaron Wilcox and Diana Grammer. And what we've tried to do with the team leaders is get somebody who is the co-chairs, somebody who may be going off, but another person who has at least one more year come so they can train together. You don't have somebody picking up a team this year that has no idea what went on last year. So the prayer team is already, they've done the Advent prayers, they've had a prayer service one night. They're working real hard to do a lot of things. Have a hospital visitation team. They work with Terry and the office on that, and they're working to, if somebody's, it's really difficult these days because, kind of drive-by. When people go to the hospital, they're not there very long. Or you go to visit them and they've already gone home. But they're working on that. So Lynette Keeling and John Dye. We have a medical next steps visitation team with Brenda Stevens and David Hogenhickle. They've kind of set the standard for this. They and the bereavement team, they find out when people are going to a rehab, to an Oak Lawn or a place like that, and make sure that somebody goes to visit those people on a regular basis. We're not letting them fall through the cracks. We have an ordinance and worship team that's gotten much more organized with Terry Windhorst and Lori Lawrence. It seemed like every Sunday they're begging people out in the hall to, help us serve, help us serve. Well, they've got that organized now. They've got 2 teams, and if they let us know well in advance, if communion's coming up or something's happening. Now they still have to grab some people here and there, but they're doing a great job with that. I'll tell you a little side story on that. Years ago, when I was at WHAS, you heard Liz Curtis? Yes. Liz was it, and Liz was on the air there, and Liz was a new Christian, and she was trying to witness to all the people at the station. So, and she was a new member of Southeast Christian Church when they were on Hikes Lane, the little church over there on Hikes Lane. And she said, would you come to church? Everybody come to church on Sunday morning and then come to my house for brunch. So, Lizzie, I'd love to come, but I teach a Sunday school class. It starts at 9. We have an 8 o'clock service. Okay, I'll be there. So I get there right at 8 o'clock, and I've got a coat on. I'm sitting on the back row in case I have to leave early. And this guy walks up, he's looking at his watch, he says, did you have a serve communion? I said, I'm not a member here. He said, won't bother me if it won't bother you. I said, what did I do? He said, follow me. And I'm walking down the aisle, passing out, for the listening. She says, what are you doing? I said, I'm serving you communion. Unfortunately, that rumor continued. Years later, I told that story, and a rumor spread through the church that the chairman of Deacons was going to Southeast Christian. It happened 10 years before that. Anyway, they're very organized and doing a great job with that. Have a family bereavement team that John Rainbow and Ken Boatwright organized last year. Do a great job with that. John and Katie Anderson. Katie Ken rotated off, but Katie moved into that. They serve people who are bereaved, and they do a great job with that. They've got a schedule organized. It's got an email from John this last week saying, hey, we've got January here now. What do we do the next few months? And people are signing up for that. And it's not just the people on this team. One of the things all these teams have done is recognize we have people who have talents they may not have, and they're organizing that and getting people to volunteer and do things. And then I mentioned the Spirit team with Sandy. She's kind of a team in herself, but she's one of the things that we're working on is the deacon nominating process. That seems to, through the years, has kind of not fallen through the cracks, but the last minute we're trying to recruit. Well, we've already started. Greg's already appointed a team, and we've got a meeting with him Sunday so that we can get through the holidays and in January hit the ground running. But that Spirit team's got some suggestions on how we might, I don't want to use the word vet, but realize how important it is and some significance in the spiritual value of that. And we want it to be a thing that people want to be a member of our deacon because they want to serve. One of our jobs, we think, I went to a conference with Greg, and they had an interview with somebody from the Hillsong Church in Australia. Are you familiar with them, their music things? One of the things this lady said, we work to connect people's lives to God, not just on Sunday, but every day. And I think that's what the deacons are trying to do here. We've got the transition statements. We've made a lot of progress on those. We've taken those seriously and tried to work on those. In fact, we want to be the leader in that. We feel like if we're spiritual leaders of the church, that if these things are important, we need to be working on it. As far as our budget is concerned, I found out we have a budget of $5,000. So at the next party, we got a big party coming up the next week. It's gonna be great. We don't spend much money. Most I looked at that, and I didn't know we had that.
That's the reason you have $5,000.
That's right. But I found out that comes really from communion supplies, that we spend it for that. And then evidently, when the church sends flowers to a bereavement, it goes through us. So we've spent about $849 of that. Much of that has been for flowers for people. Pretty much it, I think. We're always working. We want to raise, when I say it, we want to raise the profile of deacons. We don't want people to say, hey, I'm a deacon. We don't want that. We just want people to be aware that if you need something, that's what we're there for. They've been very nice to put things in the Dove for us, give us recognition when we have special things coming up, and that's helped a lot, I think. We have a lot of people that want to serve. They just need a vehicle for that. And we hope we give them that. So, any questions before my voice runs out?
Anything else?
Just the support, we appreciate it. And if you see some of these people or in a deacon, give them a pat on the back. They're not asking for that. But, they're doing some really good work, I think. So,
Great.
thank you.
Thank you.